I've always been a nature lover my whole life. I grew up literally living in the woods and I spent all my time outside. I I've just like really had a connection to nature my whole life. And so when I started going to school and learning about how our planet was being threatened, it really kind of hit home to me from a very young age. Like the first time I tried to save a tree, I was like 5. My dad needed to cut down a little tree and I wanted to save it. So I've always kind of been like that. And it's just a part of my DNA. So when I decided to start a brand, I wanted to make sure that it was something that was creating more good than, every brand creates impact of some sort. And consumerism and all our whole lives we're consuming a lot of resources, and I was inspired by brands like Tom's, where built directly into their business model is a way to give back, so that the more that they grow, their positive impact grows versus becoming like a bigger strain on the planet. So that's where my concept came from. That's why I named the company Activist Skincare. And refills have been um, something that attracts people to my brand. It's not just the great ingredients that I use and the branding and the aesthetic and everything. It's also that people have been searching for a way to be more sustainable while still being able to treat themselves, like not feeling like they have to give so much up to be more sustainable, because so much of living in harmony with our planet is about like choosing to live with less. So I think it's really important to give people a way to take care of themselves and to feel good about what they stand for and express that part of themselves, and to feel like they're not making a detrimental impact on our planet at the same time. So it's like really baked into the DNA of the brand. I guess I have two concerns. One is that so much of our population still equates um, treating themselves and like feeling good about themselves, as well as demonstrating their I guess their personal style and who they are in life and all of that with consumption. And that's just kind of a path to emptiness. So I think people are really starting to wake up to the fact that consuming more and buying more stuff, and not just like the act of buying it, but working for that, like spending all your days working at some job that you may or may not like, only to give your money away to industries that are not good for us as a whole global ecosystem. That's a big problem. Um, and there is a huge awakening happening. My customers are part of that, and the brands that are kind of like minded with me, we're all part of a revolution, um, to show that like we can take care of ourselves, but not be so excessive in our consumption, and that secondhand shopping or using what you have or trading with people in your neighborhood, things like that, can be just as fulfilling, if not more, than spending a bunch of money at the mall or whatever. Um, and then I guess there's within that community, it's really interesting to see that so many people are are embracing the like less is more, to the point of where people don't want to buy anything new at all. And that's really great. Um, but I also think that if you're going to we're voting with dollar, whether we are conscious of that or not. So I think if you're voting with your dollar, you also, I think, should feel that it's a positive impact on our planet to support the brands that are leading the revolution. I don't think they're going to wither on the vine or anything like that, but I think that the extremism sometimes is a little concerning, that people feel guilt if they do go out and buy something new, even if they've done the research on the brand and all this stuff. to make sure that it aligns with their value system. So that's that's not really a real problem, I don't think, but I do think that we don't need to be so extreme um, in adopting this new sustainable lifestyle that we feel guilty when we do have to be human and buy something new, or even buy something from a company that we don't really believe in. Like maybe you just really need something in a pinch, or you can't afford the thing that you'd really love to buy that truly does align with your values. So there's a little bit of like guilt tripping and um, excessive maybe virtue signaling. But I think that that's just kind of like, that's not that big of a deal. I think the revolution needs to continue where people are just awakening to the fact that living in harmony with each other and our planet is what brings fulfillment and happiness. It's not excessive consumption. That's never going to fill the hole that needs to be filled. I think that's a great question, first of all. And it's a tough one. Um, I think at the heart of the brand is helping people embrace their inner change maker. On the inside of my boxes, when you lift the flap, it says embrace the activist inside. And it's like a double entendre. It's the bottle of the activist product that's inside, but it's really about embracing who you are on the inside, and whatever the change that you want to see in the world, um, embrace that. I don't like it when people try to dictate beliefs to other people. We all are guided by an inner wisdom to, we know what's right inside of us. And so I think that I want people to know that taking care of that part of you is really important. And self-care is not the stuff, it's usually not the stuff that you can see on the outside. It's not face masks and bottles of champagne in the bathtub or whatever it is. It's really like spending time with yourself on a hopefully daily basis to recenter and reconnect with who you really are on the inside, when everything else strips away and you're not trying to impress anybody or feeling guilty about what you should be doing or whatever, like what you truly believe in. I want the brand to provide kind of that little moment in everyone's day where they can think about who they really are and get back in touch with themselves, because that's your like true north. It's you. It's not what the rest of the world is trying to tell you. In the future, I would love to expand refilling beyond pouches, and I'll just kind of like hold them up for everybody to see. These are my current delivery method, I guess, for refills, and they're great because they're so convenient for people to do at home. You don't have to go somewhere and bring a container and figure out how to use the tear system and all of that. But I do think that in the future, we're going to see a lot more brick and mortar stores offering bulk refills, and it's not just going to be a niche thing that's like special only in the trendy neighborhoods. So I would like to expand into doing a more of a in-person refill experience. That's probably number one on my to-do list of sustainability initiatives. My materials consist of both ingredients that go in the product and the packaging. The packaging is probably what people focus on the most from a sustainability perspective. And in the beginning, I wasn't honestly convinced that glass was the way to go, because it is really heavy and does have a really big carbon footprint. And I thought it was I wasn't completely convinced that there wasn't a role for plastic to play in the fact that it's so lightweight and not breakable. But I did choose glass. Glass is nicer feeling and it has a more luxurious feel. So customers just feel like they're just treating themselves. And that's what you want self-care products to be, is like treating yourself to something special. So glass accomplishes that, and it's also infinitely recyclable. So nothing bad happens to glass after you melt it down and reform it into a new container. Whereas plastic, it degrades each time it's recycled. So eventually it's useless and it is trash. So that's a major problem with plastic. Glass has a big carbon footprint and plastic has a big trash footprint. So the reason I went with, I'll show this again, a system where you're combining glass containers that you keep and refill over and over again, this becomes like almost a vase you would have in your house or something that holds something and you reuse it over and over again. And then this is made out of plastic, but there's so little plastic in it that it weighs less than the tops of the containers. These are plastic and they're reusable. But if we were to only sell these, then people would be recycling these jars and the plastic would be thrown away, because that's just, plastic is generally not recycled nearly at the rates that glass is. And like I said, it degrades over time, so it's not infinitely recyclable. So those are the problems with this. This weighs less than 3 grams and it is plastic, like I said, which is, it's only weighs 25% of the weight of this top. So even though it is plastic and generally people are just putting them in their trash, although I do have a send back program for recycling them, most people don't do that. And to me, that's fine, because otherwise they would just be recycling the glass and creating tons of extra carbon, because this is going to be picked up from your house by the recycling truck and taken to a facility in your town or your region, and then it's going to be trucked to a port and loaded onto a huge container ship, and then that ship's going to go about 17,000 miles to China, and they're going to then load it onto another truck and take it to a factory, melt it down using tons of probably coal to get the high heat needed to melt it down, reform it into a new container, and then put, the same process repeats. It has to then ship itself back across the world. And that's like so much carbon. And that's our number one problem. Like, that's our biggest threat. So glass is really not that sustainable when you think about the life cycle that it goes through. In order to be infinitely recyclable, it means there's an infinite loop of carbon emissions happening too. So that's why I went with this. You keep this forever. You can put it in your dishwasher and clean it out in between uses, and refill it with this pouch. And it's so easy to do at home. You just, and it's got a little notch on it, just like a ketchup packet you might get at a fast food restaurant. And you just squeeze it in there. It's super easy to do at home. So that's my story for packaging. When it comes to ingredients, I, like a lot of other green beauty brands, I really look at my sourcing, so I don't buy just from anybody. There's a lot of plant oil that I use. There's, hydrosols that I use, that I buy from 2 different companies, but both of them are involved in regenerative farming, and it's all organic, pesticide free, very ethical. The oils that I mentioned earlier, I make sure that they're hexane free, so they're not extracted in a way that like adds toxins to the oil. And so I just like look at everything that I can do to be as sustainable as possible. And then I also use synthetically created ingredients in a lab. So it's kind of like, I equate it to taking a multivitamin or, a nutritional supplement. It's like purifying these amazing things that we do get from nature and making them super potent and concentrated so that your skin can really get all the benefit from it. And usually lab creation of these things is more sustainable than getting it from nature. So certain chemicals can just be created really like a lot less intense impact on our planet if we do it in a lab. And then they're really safe and pure. So that's how I source, and that's the materials I use. It's a few years old. I think a lot of new companies go through like an incubation period where you're trying things out and testing things. So I did that for probably 2 or so years before really launching it with something that felt like an actual brand. So the brand that you see now with, you know, with this branding and the product line that I have is just over 2 years old. I would love to be kind of, I don't know if the word household name is the right word, but you know, within the conscious consumer or, you know, sustainability community, I would love to be top of mind. That's really my main goal, is for the people who are already like really dedicated to sustainable lifestyle choices, as well as people who are just dipping their toes in to the like easiest switch that they can make to be more sustainable while not compromising like all the awesome things about treating yourself to new products. I really just, I hope that I can achieve the awareness that like everybody immediately, like activist skincare just rolls off the tongue when people are thinking sustainability and self-care.